Welcome, everybody, to Sunday morning at the Marxist Library. A quick note before we start. This session is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube with a link on our website, ICSSmarx.org, within the next couple of days. So, welcome. In pre-pandemic times, this weekly program was hosted at the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library located in Oakland, California, USA. During the pandemic, we have been meeting every Sunday on Zoom. So in fact, we should say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we now have attendees from throughout the United States and even from around the world. My name is Alan Miller, and I'm a member of the program committee that organizes Sunday mornings at the Marxist Library. Now, I'd like to start off by saying that we always welcome input, feedback, suggestions for topics, and speakers. You can sign up for email notifications for our meetings and contact us through our website at ICSSmarx.org. That's ICSSmarx.org. For over a decade and a half, Sunday morning at the Marxist Library programs have been a platform for diverse presentations on a variety of topics, such as working class struggles, political economy, socialism, the fight against imperialism, militarism and war, the environmental movement, and the fight for racial and gender justice. We wish to remind you that this is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate. As such, we ask that you show respect for our participants and the moderator of today's session. Please note that the opinions expressed here are those of the speaker and participants. They do not represent the ICSS or the Marxist Library. However, we are united in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, and we believe that his work remains relevant today. Our motto is taken from Marx's 11th thesis on Feuerbach. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Our session today is on Turkiye 2023, the collapse. We have a very special session. Our speakers are journalist and political activist Mehmet Bayram, who recently returned from a long visit to Turkey, and Yusuf, who was originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and is currently living in New Haven, Connecticut. He's a member of the CPUSA, as well as a member of the U.S. Peace Council in Connecticut, and a member of the steering committee for the Center for Marxist Education, located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mehmet.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody, for participating today, and especially thank you, Yusuf, who at the last moment, I asked him to participate as well because I attended one of his presentations and was very impressed because he had done a bewildering job of trying to sort out the left in Turkey, what they are doing on the upcoming elections on May 14th. But at this time, we don't even know if those elections are going to happen or not. As you will understand from my presentation, at least, that the Turkey, and I would assume I would, go to the extent to say that in the world, we are seeing an upsurge of right-wing attacks on liberties, on, the human rights and workers' rights. And so because of that, we may not see the election, or even if the elections are done, how it will result or what will happen there, we don't know yet. By the way, we may not fully agree on everything with Yusuf, but I respect, and I'm sure he does too, each other's differences. I'm sure that it's going to give you a broader range of ideas about what's going on in Turkey. As we were preparing for this demonstration or for this presentation, something happened in Turkey. It was the earthquake, not only in Turkey, but in Syria as well. So we were kind of contemplating whether to change the subject, the collapse, from a political economic perspective to the collapse that we observed in the earthquake. I went through that a lot, back and forth, but I decided to stick to the original line and just say few things about the earthquake, because the collapse that we saw in the earthquake is an example of the collapse of the system in Turkey. And while we were talking about this a couple of weeks back, a comrade from Turkey cautioned me very rightfully that when we talk about a collapse, especially of the state, that the state had not collapsed. Although we hear this in Turkey in the content of the earthquake, that the system has collapsed, the government has collapsed, the state has collapsed, because nobody could see any kind of rescue or relief effort after the earthquake. And they regarded this as the collapse of the system, as the collapse of the state, which is very, very important to Turkish history. But that's why we are going to open the discussion with the investigating of what a state is. Did the state really collapse in Turkey? Yes and no. Yes, because the states themselves have an appearance that they are the harmonizer, they are the like the balancer of the forces in the society, especially class societies. But it is not so. But the other face of state is the class dictatorship of the ruling classes. So that part of the state did not collapse. Not only did it not collapse, but I think it's getting more and more fierce and violent. So until, with a revolutionary upheaval, that state structure, state apparatus is taken down, I'm not foreseeing in the near future of the state to collapse, especially by its own weight. So it's not going to happen. Very few sentences about the earthquake that happened is that it's very obvious that the state was not interested in any kind of relief, rescue, whatever you would call it, because it was very busy being a neo-colonial, neoliberal state that is not in the service of its people. It was very busy making money. It was very busy doing business, selling off. And as we've seen, only a few days into the earthquake, while people were still mourning, still trying to get their families out of the rubble, the head of the state, Erdogan, stands up and starts building a business model. It's a boondoggle for his supporters, the construction industry, to clean out the mess and to start building again. We're going to come to this at the end of the presentation. That's why I decided to go with the original script and show that the Turkish state especially, but I'm seeing this all around now with all the masks coming out, the states themselves are no longer hiding their faces behind a humanitarian, like being on the side of the people, providing services. That is gone now. We are seeing the brutal attack of that apparatus of the ruling classes everywhere. We've seen this in pandemic. Now we are seeing this in the earthquake. The same thing happening again and again. So what this tells us is that there is no cure, there is no solution in trying to provide change in the system by trying to make it democratic or anything, but to change it radically, to change to another system. Without that, we are not going anywhere. And as a leftist, as a Marxist, I'm not the one who's saying this only. It's very interesting that the liberal voices in Turkey, after the earthquake, started saying that, the coming elections are a sham. Don't waste your time on it. But we need a radical change from ground up. It was very interesting to hear this from the liberal journalists and thinkers saying that there is no hope in this system. Of course, that takes us back to our slogans of the 1970s, where our slogan and analysis said the only path is revolution. This is an analysis. This is not only a slogan. What it says is that let's not put our hope into a democratic change by electoral politics and so on and so forth, but is to start changing it radically. So in order to get into it now, I'd like to do a screen sharing, if you don't mind. And have you seen my screen?
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay, cool. So it is the total collapse. And I'm going to sometimes go fast because I have too many slides and I'm known to, extend the time, and Yusuf is going to be presenting as well. So here is the gist of this whole presentation is that when a country comes into being in the age of imperialism, you're going to hear that a lot, age of imperialism, then it doesn't have choices to be democratic, or are the gangs and rapacious capitalism the only way to go? I think I'm tended to go with the second one. And you're going to hear this age of imperialism again, because I want to emphasize that whatever happens in these countries, it is being done under the influence of a new force after the 1900s. And that's called imperialism. So I really appreciate Lenin's approach to that, saying that, the capitalism that we used to know, the free market and so on and so forth, is no longer the determinant force, but it has grown into a collapse of itself. That's the imperialism. So we have to understand that these things that are happening is all being done under the influence of imperialism. That is the whole rotting away of even the rapacious capitalism. So that's how bad this whole thing is. So we're going to be talking about Gladio. Why have I chosen that? The reason is that in the past we have had sessions on Turkey, and I spoke in great length theoretically about where Turkey is, what happens, class structure, so on and so forth, the history. But I have a feeling, I may be wrong, but I am under the feeling that the way that day-to-day life of this neo-colonial country under the age of, under imperialism is not well understood, because people mostly bring the relationship of capitalism in order to explain the exploitative forces, which are, of course, at the ground level, that's what it is. But other forces that we do not see, I'm not saying they don't exist, we do not see in the metropole countries, are very, very obvious and very, very functional in the neo-colonial countries, and that's the gangs. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time today explaining what and how the gangs operate, because instead of, this is one of my theses, especially in this presentation, is that instead of the good old exploitation of surplus value in imperialism age, it is very, very convenient to just get what you need and run with it. You can't wait for the surplus value or the market forces or the buying, selling, and dealing with the day-to-day life of production. That is gone. Now we are in the so-called service industry. Now we've even passed that. It's a mafia economy. It's a mafia system run by gangs. And these gangs are not in any means of the sentence independent from the government, from the state. The state and the gangs and politics are all one, which takes us actually to the definitions, one of the definitions of fascism. So we are going to look at the gangs, and again, something especially in Turkey, we see there is this view of a father state. In times of trouble, the state comes in, helps you out, like an earthquake and so on and so forth. And people are screaming all over the place, where is the state? Where is the government? Why are we not getting out? I'm going to show at the end again is that, no, the state is where it is. It has not collapsed, but it's doing its function of dictatorship of the ruling classes. And it has no, I don't know, no will to even appear on the side of the people or to help in the earthquake or pandemic or anything like that. So we're going to what the state is, because this is the central discussion in all of this. The state should help and so on and so forth. So I have here some definitions that comes up. I feel very, very, strong about them. And one is by Engels. He's defining the state. And then by Lenin showing that, Engels kind of shows how the state came about. There needed to be a power for law and order and for, lying to the people that there is no classes, as Turkish state still maintains that in Turkey there are no classes. This is from Kemal's time. But Lenin goes in to say that, wait a minute, the state, as he has seen it back in 1905, 1915, is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And especially in the times of crisis, we know where this could go. We saw that in Germany. So in the Turkish history, Turk's state has a very special place in Turkish culture, Turkish daily life, and Turkish history. Turks praise themselves because they have built, they call 16 states. And so they believe that they are an expert on building states. They don't say how they destroyed the 15 of them and built, but anyway, actually they have built more than 16, but this is something of a pride. But in the center of this is the state. And this is very important. Why? Because when you have even the opposition to the Erdogan dictatorship, Erdogan fascism, Erdogan can control everybody by saying that whatever I'm doing, it's for the benefit of the Turkish state. Then the whole world stops. If it's for our state, then yeah, go ahead, do it. That's why when he started attacking Syria, he started attacking Iraq and the minorities in which have been under attack since the Republic. The minute somebody mentions that this is for the benefit of the Turkish state, the entire opposition, not the leftists, entire opposition just stops and takes their line behind. So we go on how Turkish Republic was built. Now, we know that the so-called liberation war was mainly run by the gangs. And these gangs could do whatever they want. And their attacks, as well as the central Anatolian government, was the war was not against imperialism, as we are being told, but it was against the minorities, especially non-Muslim minorities. And the Muslim gangs were the #1 fighters to get rid of non-Muslims from Anatolia, because the decision in the late 1890s were given that a new state had to form from Ottomans, and it could only have Turks, Muslims, because the definition of Turk was still ambiguous at that time, but what they meant was Muslim. It had to be Muslim. So the minorities had to go, Greeks, Armenians, so on and so forth. So the Armenian genocide is the same thing I just mentioned about. So it's very interesting. It is a question that keeps coming up. It is related to the gangs. That's why I included here. is that the first Turkish Communist Party that was formed in Baku, and they had the blessing of the Soviet Union. They gave their full support to Mustafa Kemal in the liberation, so-called liberation war. And they sent him a telegram saying that, hey, we support you. We want to come and join with you on your fight. We'll be there with you. We're together for our state, for our new country. And Mustafa Kemal sent them an invitation saying, yeah, do come in. And but the minute he sent that telegram to them, inviting them over, he sent telegrams to his gangs to get prepared in the East. And so when the Turkish Communist Party with 15 members entered Turkey or through the borders, I mean, even in rainy day, nobody had, in the East, dark villages, and they don't know who is communist, what is all of it, but people were organized to lynch them. So one by one, as they go through town to town, they are being attacked by organized people, by Mustafa Kemal's gangs. So finally, the gang members tell the group that they cannot protect them, so they need to go back to Georgia. So they put them in a boat, and then they drown every one of them, except for the wife of Mustafa Suphi. She's a doctor, she's a philosopher, she's a writer, and she is now being passed among the gangs for being raped. And finally, people don't know what happened to her. I think she lost her mind, being, like a woman that is being, gang raped every day. So I think she died like a homeless on the streets of northern Turkey. So when the Communist Party entered Turkey, Mustafa Kemal gave a speech in the National Assembly. He said the ones who he had invited for the joint struggle, these hoodlums have formed a group called the Communist Party of Turkey, and Mustafa Suphi and his predecessors are at the head of these who constitute this group. They have made some attempts to benefit the principal people in Moscow who give them money, protect them, and attach importance to them. In this way, communism has begun to be brought into our country and our nation from outside. And what happened was that after his death, Soviet Union just simply accepted Atatürk's, explanation that, oh, there was an accident at sea, and sorry, they're all gone. And so it wasn't raised again, and these communists were thrown under the bus. But we have to understand who did this, and it was gangs. And why am I emphasizing this? Is that Mustafa Kemal was the #1 person who used and organized and benefited from gang violence. So gangs are an integral part of the establishment of Turkey. And this Topal Osman is a gangster who worked for Mustafa Kemal, and so he was also killed by another gang supported by the Mustafa Kemal. So there's this gang warfare going on, and Mustafa Kemal, now that the republic is set, he is trying to get them under his control. I mean, if there's gonna be one person, that's gonna be him, and not gangs running around, So we can't allow that. So under the new republic, consolidated by the Kemal, is a capitalist country. We have to be very, very clear on that. And these are the items that they bring up as their leading items. And of course, nationalism, statism, and so on and so forth are there as the Kemalist road. Now, the reason why Soviet Union didn't raise its voice on the massacre of the communists, and Britain allowing Mustafa Kemal to establish this country, which was under attack, yes, it was under occupation, was that both of the countries needed a buffer country between. Soviets are scared of imperialist attacks right at their border. Think of Ukraine today. Think of Ukraine. That's what happened in 1923. You don't want an imperialist country with its forces right next to your border, and the imperialists are scared of the red menace coming from the Soviet Union. So it's always good to have a buffer state in between. And Mustafa Kemal, of course, was very in favor of the capitalist structure. He had made up his mind, and the country was going that way and everything. But in the fight, Soviet Union had helped quite a lot to Mustafa Kemal because he's also still, unfortunately, seen as a fighter against imperialism and so on and so forth. So he benefited from the Soviet help. But once the republic is established, it was immediately going to the capitalist side. And in 1923, in order to tell this side, their side of the story, like telling the capitalist world, "Hey, we are on your side, guys. I mean, we're there." So they formed the Izmir Economic Conference, where all the foreign delegates were invited. And it's very interesting today when you look at the people discussing the history of this very important economic conference, which is drawing the path of the future of Turkey in economics. They refuse to say that there it was decided that Turkey was going to open up to foreign investment. Why? Because they want to portray Mustafa Kemal as a nationalist. Oh, he fought the imperialists. He was against capitalism. He wanted to develop the country with his own sources. No, no, no. Mustafa Kemal is begging for the foreign investment to come in, and he's providing them protection in Turkey. This is 1923. Thus starts a regime that is called, even in their own, this book that you are seeing, Tek Adam, is written by a leftist communist Kemalist, who is bragging and praising from the first page to the last of how good a regime of one man was. And so that is actually, they don't know, but that became the model. Did it have any other recourse? I don't think so. Again, age of imperialism, where the force is should be bigger than the history of capitalism that developed in other parts of the world. Very interesting. Not too many people like to talk about this, but Hitler and Mussolini did nothing but praise Mustafa Kemal. I mean, Hitler time and time again said, "I am only a student of Mustafa Kemal." The same thing was said by Mussolini. He said, not only admired Hitler, not only admired, but also sought to imitate Atatürk's radical construction of a new nation from the ashes of defeat in World War I. Hitler and the Nazis watched closely as Atatürk defied the Western powers to seize government, and they modeled the Munich Putsch to a large degree on Atatürk's rebellion in Ankara. Hitler later remarked that in the political aftermath of the Great War, Atatürk was his master, he and Mussolini his student. So that kind of gives you an indication of where the state, remember, we are talking state, the gangs, and on the way where Hitler, the way Hitler sees it. So it's is it any wonder today that we have a one-man rule in Turkey by Erdogan? I keep saying that Erdogan is the most faithful Kemalist in Turkey, and people roll their eyes because they believe this model that Atatürk was one thing and Erdogan completely opposite, because Atatürk believed in secularism and Erdogan doesn't. No, no, no. It is the domination of the state, domination of the capital, and oppressing every people's movement with blood. So not much has changed. In Atatürk's time, the one-man rule that people today opposing Erdogan's fascism try to bring as a model, oh, the years of Kemal was so good. No, it wasn't. I mean, you are seeing people being hung by the Istiklal courts, where you are not allowed to have a lawyer. You are not allowed to bring evidence. You are not allowed to defend yourself. Many times people were brought in the evening, and they claimed they wanted to have a lawyer because they're being charged and they're going to be punished by the death penalty. And the judge appointed by Mustafa Kemal says, "Oh, you want to waste time with the lawyers, huh? We're not going to fall into that trap." And in the morning they hung him. In these courts appointed by Mustafa Kemal, they have even tried and hung Jewish people for trying to bring Muslim Sharia law. This is how stupid and how, I mean, outrageous this was. Just because somebody may have been seen opposing Mustafa Kemal was enough. And again, Jewish people were hung for for trying to bring the Islamic rule, which, that rule would have killed them. So it's so stupid. But that's the model today. Unfortunately, this is my criticism of the opposition that is there, because Turkey has been divided into two. Those with the Sharia, with the Islamic law are behind Erdogan, and the progressive, the modern, the better side of Kemalists who want the days to be just like what Kemal did back then. So this comes to our favorite definition and a favorite discussion of fascism. And I'm not going to go into it. You can read that. But the most important thing I want here is that because of our discussions, I believe people don't represent what fascism is, especially in the 2000s, where they claim that fascism has to come from the masses. It's an ideology that comes from there, and so on and so forth. And they claim that, hey, look, under fascism, you can't have an open parliament, you can't have workers' unions, associations, so on and so forth. Fascism is the brutal dictatorship. How can you have these things? Well, Dimitrov says, fascism does not immediately venture to abolish parliament, but allows the other bourgeois parties as well as the social democratic parties to retain a modicum of legality. And then he goes, this doesn't prevent fascism when its position becomes particularly acute from trying to extend its basis and without altering its class nature, trying to combine open terrorist dictatorship with a crude sham of parliamentarism. See, you can have fascism, the dictatorship in the age of imperialism, of the finance capital, but you can have a parliament running. You can have demonstrations here and there. And we're going to come to a slide that I had done before to explain the difference between metropolitan states, again, the states, and the neo-colonial states. Now, I must here say that I am subscribed to the idea that the difference between the capital states, look at the capital state formation, where you have the neo-colonial type fascist states and the bourgeois democratic states. You see the bourgeois democratic states mostly like in Europe, in metropole countries, and so on and so forth. And the neo-colonial type fascist states are those who came to be born mostly in the age of imperialism, but they are more of a, third world country, and they are client states of imperialism. Now, there's a big discussion in Turkey about what is the difference. Why did the underdeveloped countries become underdeveloped? Where was the break? What happened? Why do we have democracies in Europe and everywhere else, like in the metropole countries, but you hardly see even the bourgeois democracy in the neo-colonial countries? What made it that way? one of the discussions is the bourgeois revolution. And this is a very contested item, which I would like to bring maybe in other presentations. If I'm not mistaken, last year I gave a presentation on the theory of revolution, and I would like to revisit it again because there are very compelling arguments that those things that we considered as bourgeois revolutions that happened in France in 1600s in England, those were they really bourgeois revolutions? Aren't we giving too much credit to the bourgeoisie when the actual fight did not happen between the bourgeoisie of capitalism today, but it was the serfs and the landlords, the aristocracy and the serfs, and so on and so forth, the classes that existed under feudalism that brought up the bourgeoisie. So it's a very interesting discussion, and we will revisit that much later on. So we'll have to come to when, after the republic was formed, Turkey had a big problem because they had killed all the capitalists that existed in the country, because they were mostly of the Greek, Jewish, and especially Armenian origins. And the new Turkey had to be Turkish only, nobody else. So they had killed them off, and now they wanted to become capitalists, and they didn't have any capital. So how do you solve this problem? Oh, the state, again, the state jumps in and starts building the capitalist infrastructure. In 1950, this developed 1950 until Turkey entered NATO, and by joining the Korean War and the atrocities there, and so now Turkey is integrating. It is kind of developing into this, non-existent capitalism before. Now they have the elements of capitalism emerging right and left, but the state is still central, because you cannot allow free market or anything like that. State has to control every single thing that happens every day, 24/7. So now we are joining NATO, and the gangs are again in the picture. 6-7 September events in 1955, Turkish special forces, which we're going to come again, that they were tied with the NATO Gladio. They held an operation. They bombed Atatürk's home in Greece. And then the papers were ready. It's very interesting. It's always a chronic problem in Turkey to find newspaper papers, okay? It's very limited and everything. But before the bomb happened, the papers were ready with the headlines already. Greeks are attacking our leader and this and that. And so there was a big rise with the leadership of the special forces acting as regular people on the street. And people attacked whatever is left of Armenian, Greek, and Jews, especially in Istanbul. Their whole businesses were looted, homes burned, more than 300, 400 women raped on the streets. And so that was the end of it. And they had to leave the country because Turkey now had a Turkish capitalist base. Hey, we didn't need them anymore. So they had to go. Another, genocide. So NATO, then we come to the other side of imperialism, how NATO operates not only in Turkey, but also in Europe. It's very interesting that I think it was with the Andreotti, the fascist, actually, Italian prime minister, kind of said that, oh, yeah, we have those units that operate as stay behind armies. This is very important, and that's the terminology that the US uses, NATO uses, stay behind armies that were left in especially Europe to counter any attack that would come from the Soviets. So these are secret organizations. The governments usually don't even know that they exist. and they operate within the army, within the civil structure, within the government, but they are not elected. They are not elected. They are appointed by that secret organization. I know it sounds like the conspiracy theory and everything, but when Andretti came up with this, then it started to come up everywhere, in Germany, in Greece, especially when, in their history, the colonels had done coups and everything, all done with this organization. So so it's a terror organization, so on and so forth. And in Turkey, the NATO had, very interesting, elected the most nationalist of all the nationals, Alparslan Türkeş, as the go-between, the organizer of this unit, the stay behind unit in Turkey. And we will come more to him as we said. His number one effort was to organize the Grey Wolves. Grey Wolves are your ordinary street gangs, but they are being charged by doing this gangsterism for their country. It is for pan-Islamism, pan-Turkism, and they are in the thought that one day from Europe to the Pacific coast, Japan, Korea, will become Turkish. So they organize these, and you can see their finances, coming from that. And the last one is the payments from CIA, US aid, or SAVAK, from Israel. Now, these sources of income was done by a Attorney General, Doğan Öz, in the 1970s. He came up with this, and so not much passed before he was gunned down by a Grey Wolf assassin who was also working for the government. So one thing that's very important is that these Grey Wolves are not just your gangs on the street. They're very well organized by the state, very well connected. Everything that the state wants them to do, they will do. They have a discipline, they have so and so. So Bülent Ecevit is a prime minister, that's a center-left guy, but we have to understand, people think that he's honest, he's, this, that, he's a progressive. He does have elements when you compare to the others, but even in his own admission, he became one of the top politicians by declaring that the rise of the left had to be stopped. Rise of the left had to be stopped. And how do you do that? With a concept called center-leftism. He is the architect of this. And again, the whole project is that the left is rising, left is becoming very popular everywhere, and this had to be stopped. So he's the builder of that. But he's kind of innocent guy. So while he's the prime minister, one day they approach him. They're surprised. They come in and say, "Well, we have this this unit, and we need to pay them." He looks at all his documents and everything. There is no such unit in the army called Special Forces or Special War Unit. He's never seen it. It's not in the papers. It's now nowhere. He said, "What the hell is this?" So they say, "Well, it's a special unit." And so Ecevit says, "Okay, so if I'm going to pay them, who was paying them before? Why did this happen that we need to pay them now?" And they explained to him that, oh, it was the United States that paid for this unit in the army, that the prime minister and the president has no idea about. So he goes around asking questions, and he's complaining that what is this? So he's told openly to shut up about it. Okay, just shut up and deal with it. So he's now he's a nationalist for sure, but he cannot accept that this is happening. So he keeps on talking about it. These are all the assassination attempts on his life. Even though as a center-left prime minister, they are trying to get him. And again, many of these assassinations, behind them are the Grey Wolves. Grey Wolves and the deep state. The terminology deep state actually originated from Turkey. And because of this special war unit and those that we do not see in our democratically elected government, electoral politics. So it is the deep state that is involved. How do we know this? Look, I mean, there was an assassination attempt on his life with a weapon that doesn't exist in the inventory of Turkish military or the police forces. It doesn't. It's from Israel, and only then they found out 3 of them exist with special bullets and this. How was his protection? The police officer that tried to kill him with that weapon possessed that. So, a lot of things there. So the way that the gray wolves finance themselves, apart from the CIA, USA, SAVAK, and everything, they do anything and everything under the sun that's illegal. This is such a small sample of the narcotics dealing, very, very, very small sample of those who are caught from the gray wolves and its party. It has a party, National Action Party of the Turkish. He's the one that established this party. And today, National Action Party is in the government together with Erdogan. Need I say more? So a journalist, he's again a nationalist and an honest journalist who started investigating the ties of the CIA in Turkish army, the police, the state apparatus, and also how weapons of the Turkish army was ending up in friendly Kurdish tribes. So he was gunned down. Then the general, only a few days after his assassination, a top general who was also irked by this, the weapons being given, and he was very much against the US help to organize the Turkish army. He opposed that openly. So a few days after the journalist assassination, Eşref Bitlis was massacred. He was killed. Then comes now the operation of the Gladio, the special war unit, the gangs now have to be organized. They're at that level. They have come to that level. And so they attacked the town of Maraş, where the Alevis and Kurds live, and they massacred more than 500 people, and they maybe 1,000 people were wounded, and 552 homes were burned or demolished, and 289 businesses, they were burned. Just to let you know that this is not the only one. They tried it in 2 or 3 places. And I remember being in one of the areas that was under attack at that time. The revolutionaries were trying to defend the neighborhoods, and the fascists, the gray wolves, would climb up to the mosques and the minarets and fire to us from there, shoot us from there. But we couldn't shoot back, because the minute we shot even one bullet, next day's headlines would all come up saying revolutionaries are shooting at mosques, and that would have ended the deal. So we were kind of like sitting ducks there while they shot us. And so a earth-changing accident happened at Susurluk in one of the towns, where a car slammed into a truck. And so I think 3 people died there. But the importance is that now we see the gangs, the state, the politicians, and economies working all together. Is that there was the chief of police, the deputy chief of police of Istanbul was in that car. He died. A guy called Abdullah Çatlı died, and his girlfriend died. And the one other MP from the parliament is, he survived. Now, the guy who died, Abdullah Çatlı, together with the police, was a wanted man. He's wanted all over the world, not only in Turkey as well, but he's a wanted man by the red bullet by the Interpol. Here are his crimes, let me say. But he's the leader of the Grey Wolves. And he is a hired killer for the Turkish state through its intelligence and war unit, the Gladio war unit. But you could not prosecute him. They caught him, and prior to this accident, he was caught, and but his fake IDs, everything was supplied by the Turkish top chief of police, Mehmet R. He's the chief of police, okay? And the fake IDs of Chatla and his family, he had other families, all had real fake IDs, real fake. It's not done in a street corner. It's done by the government with the signature of the chief of police, Mehmet R, signature there. And so there are other gangs in the region as well. What were these guys doing? An MP, and the car was full of automatic rifles, drugs, fake IDs, anything you can imagine that was in the car. So there was a local gang, and they are involved in this as well. What is happening is that the region is going to be opened up to casino and gambling. And this group, the police chief, the MP, the terrorist, and his girlfriend, are going around buying land for speculation in there. Do you see now the gangs and the state are moving into making money, real money, in business? They are opening businesses. And those that were involved, also getting weapons from the state government to kill other gang members, is now in the main opposition party, E party, that is a nationalist offspring from the National Action Party. So he's still in politics. Then Mehmet R, the chief of police that was giving fake IDs and signing and protecting Abdullah Çatlı, is one of the main people of the Gladio and the gangs. He is the member, and so in his time, he imported many weapons from Israel, and he reported all of them we lost them, sorry, they've gone. And so in embarrassment, he was forced to resign, and then he became the Minister of Interior, and he was tasked for solving the gang issue related to the Turkish state. And of course, that never happened. He was involved in many killings and so on and so forth. And here is his, like a couple of years back, in Bodrum, one of the most plush places, where the new economic model, that's what I'm emphasizing, is what they call is taking over. Means you don't buy a business, you don't sell and trade businesses. You just go there, you take up your gun, and you just take it over. That's mine, man. Just walk. This is what he has done with his son to the most plush, the marina of the most expensive place in Turkey. You go there. I mean, we have a house nearby. You go there, you see yachts of 100 yards, 100 feet long, and just unbelievable lifestyle. So he took that over, and in the picture that you see to his left is yet another state terrorist, murderer, killer that was in prison and was just forgiven by the head of the National Action Party just a couple of years back. He killed his wife, and he was serving time, but with a special, permission, he was let to go. This is our son today.
Mehmet, we're getting close. We're almost at 11:30, so pretty soon switch over to Yusuf.
Yeah. Okay. Coming then. I'm gonna pass all these. I mean, this is now the gangs are ratting on each other and telling how they conducted business with the government, so on and so forth. Let me come. Okay. Here is the gang of five that we can come to the earthquake today. 5 corporations take nearly every single project, the boondoggle project that the government gives out. They are very close to Erdogan, and they were nothing a few years back. Now they are the richest in the world. And the other arm of the state is to sell whatever is in the government, in the state. And here is the privatization. With Turkey, nothing left to sell. Everything is privatized. So these guys buy the government businesses for fire sale prices, and then in few months back they sell it back to the government, double, triple what they have bought, and make a killing. That's how privatization happens. And an example is the Kütahya airport, done and in a very small town, and the government promised and guaranteed 1 million passengers. If less than 1 million passengers travel there, all the expenses are paid by the government to the managing corporation. The airport is open. It has air conditioner, security, electricity, power, everything is running, and the government is paying for that. And for 18 months, not a single goddamn plane either flew there or took off from there. So 1 million people's expenses are being paid by the government to the corporation. This is privatization. So this is where we come to what happens to the economy. And where is the government? Where is the state? People are screaming now after the earthquake. Well, the government and the state is where it is. They are arresting, they are attacking anybody who wants to even hold a press conference about the earthquake. You are not allowed to do that. 10 Communist Party members are arrested the other day because they organized such a wonderful aid distribution that the government came and first accused them of stealing the supplies for the earthquake victims. And when that didn't hold, because those guys had paid from their pockets to go to the region, organize and help, brought supplies, truckloads of supplies. They brought doctors, communist doctors are there, communist nurses are there helping the earthquake people. But the government attacked them, and now they're under arrest for what? It is for showing that the Turkish state is weak. By distribution, they are making Turkish state look weak, and they are under arrest now because of that. So I'll just cut it off here and then give Yusuf. Sorry about that, Yusuf. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Yusuf, go ahead and stop your screen share, Mehmet. And Yusuf, if we'll go over a bit because we do have two speakers, and then we'll shift into question and answer in about 10 minutes. That be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Mehmet. I agree with almost everything you say. Our view of, the tradition I come from what I understand, is that Mustafa Mustafa Kemal is a bourgeois revolutionary. He established rule of the bourgeoisie, imperfect rule of the bourgeoisie. But he comes with all the contradictions that the bourgeoisie comes with. Previously, I had mentioned the example of Cromwell. Yes, he for the first time in Europe, he establishes, it's called Commonwealth, was essentially a republic, behead the king, but on the other hand, he wages a very brutal imperialist war against the Irish. So such as the contradictions of even the best, quote unquote, best bourgeois revolutionaries. They establish rule of capital, that's their job, but have a progressive role against feudalism. And what was opposed to Kemal was the old order, the imperial order, the rule of Islamic law, and actually a regime that had took a step backward, and instead of the more subtle neo-colonialism or imperialism, the outright colonialism with boots on the ground and annexation. So these were the conditions that the tradition, well, not the tradition, the more recently formulated view I come from. At any rate, Mustafa Kemal is not running for office. He's dead. This is a matter of history. Also, I would say what happened with the 15 communists, Lenin had no illusions about Mustafa Kemal being a socialist, but however, it was apparent that he would replace the monarchy and, as I said, at least prevent outright colonialism, and that on the doorstep of the Soviet Union to boot. But yes, he was. It was a motley group with, yes, even Islamists, Turkish nationalists forming the core and the majority, and also communists. So is the groups represented today by the Ba'ath or the or Nasser. They too repress communists. But on the other hand, they stick up somewhat to outright imperialism. Also, the supporters, what are known as Kemalists, are generally civil servants, sometimes military, although the military has been somewhat purged of them, and they still have some notion of a planned economy. They're somewhat against. They're against at least outright imperial domination. So they are people that can be either pushed to the right or potentially to the join the left. So I didn't get a preview of your talk, so right now the Turkish left, all the major parties are consolidated. There are two alliances, but they're not outright hostile, and they're interlocking. I made a presentation before, and let's say screen share screen, and okay. It starts out with a 9-party working group. All these parties espouse, two are not officially political parties. All except HDP, the People's Democratic Party, which is the third largest party, espouse Marxism. People's Democratic Party is mainly Kurdish oriented, and it includes Marxist socialists in their ranks. Now, the debate was to the problem was the politics of the People's Democratic Party that compromises with the imperialism because they are close. They're ideologically into solidarity somewhat unofficially with the PKK and YPG in Syria, and YPG in Syria is under protection of NATO, so they don't take on NATO, for example. And they've made compromises with the neoliberals, including in the past the government. They don't define themselves as a workers' party. So the one is the those who felt uncomfortable in an electoral alliance with them are the Communist Party, the Communist movement of Communist Party of Turkey, full name. The Communist Movement of Turkey, formerly a faction of the Communist Party. The Revolution Movement, again, similar, but it's a very small movement, mainly the university youth, former university youth wing, redefining itself as a party, and the Left Party, which comes from the independent left tradition, for want of a different name, which has rebranded itself to exclude elements that compromise with imperialism. Okay, and the other is the Labor and Freedom Alliance. This is the second largest opposition alliance. And it's mainly the weight is the People's Democratic Party. It includes the Labour Party, which is also a member of the International Meeting of Communist and Workers' Parties. It's the less active member. The Communist Party of Turkey is the most active, is the principal actor in that. The Laborist Action Party, which is a sort of a take on the national state Action Party. I mean, it's I think the name comes from that. The Workers' Party of Turkey, that was originally a faction of the Communist Party of Turkey, that wanted a broader a broader program. It's also the most parliamentary oriented of the socialist parties. It has currently 4 members of parliament. The Federation of Socialist Assemblies, that's the former Communist Party of Turkey, Marxist-Leninist, obviously a Maoist group that's mostly defunct. These are the ones that have chosen the the legal path, and also this Social Freedom Party, which is a follower of a rather eclectic, the late eclectic communist. He was person difficult to fit in. Hikmet Kıvılcımlı. Usually his followers have a nationalist orientation. This has actually a pro-Kurdish and sort of a semi-libertarian socialist, semi-anarcho-socialist orientation, if I may, for want of a better term. Outside supporter is the very large NGO People's Houses. People's Houses was originally a communist institution. It was revived in 1960 as a leftist organization, and that has not joined the electoral alliance, but is my understanding supportive of it. Mehmet, okay, he nods, okay. He knows.
So Yusuf, I think what we're going to do now is let's stop the presentation and shift over to question and answer, because I think people have a lot of questions about current situation. So we've got about 45 minutes left to the end of the program. We usually
how much more does Yusuf's presentation have?
Well, actually, I could finish here. I think this is a good place to stop, and I could make some comments later.
Okay. All right. So let's just take a short break here. If you would go ahead and stop your screen share. Just a couple of quick announcements for upcoming programs. We have some good programs in store. Let me share my screen. Next week, we're going to have a program on the Wilmington 10. Kenneth Jenkins, who's a professor of African American history at University of North Carolina, and wrote a book about the Wilmington 10, is going to give a talk about this really pivotal historical event in the civil rights movement, the Black liberation movement of the 1970s. Should be a very good presentation. Encourage everybody to come in. On March the 19th, we're going to have Scott Ritter, who will be speaking on disarmament and the danger of nuclear war and the war in Ukraine. Scott Ritter will be appearing in the at the library. So we're actually going to have a hybrid event on the 19th with Scott Ritter appearing in person. And people are going to be encouraged to come and bring questions. It's going to be a kind of a rare opportunity to ask Scott questions directly and to participate in a discussion about what's going on in Ukraine, a very serious and dangerous situation that's going on there today. So that's on March 19th. One of the things I want to encourage everybody to do is to go to our website, sign up at ICSSmarks.org to be on our mailing list. Also, if you can, to go to the website and make a contribution to support our activities. There's a menu choice on the website where you can get information about how to donate, where to donate to the Sunday morning programs. So with that, what I think we're going to do is let's do question and answers, and we can start off. And people, if you would raise your hand down at the bottom of your screen using the reactions button, if people have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand. We'll take people in the order in which you raise your hand. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sharon to start. Okay, Sharon, if you would please. Let me go ahead and allow people to unmute. So go ahead and unmute, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mehmet, and Yusuf for a very important historical perspective. I wish we need to study a lot more about the history of the Middle East and that region, your region in particular. I have just a couple of questions about your framework. So you talked about gang-ruled capitalist states that were formed by imperialism. But I wasn't clear whether do you think that all states that were formed by imperialism are essentially the same model of gang ruled? And in particular, you talked about take the money and run capitalism rather than the goal being development of productive forces within that state. And I'm trying to think of examples. So El Salvador is there's production comes out of El Salvador. It's a lot foreign investment. So the capitalists who are reaping the profits from the surplus labor of Salvadoran workers are not necessarily Salvadoran. They are, by and large, are not Salvadoran, but there are some that we used to call comprador bourgeoisie who are, you know, Salvadorans and Salvadoran capital. So is there not Turkish capital that is benefiting from the labor of the masses of Turkish people? And yes, there are many imperialist formed states that are run by gangsters, but they also have the just like in Turkey, they have the veneer of democratic processes and other parties, as Yusuf was referring to. And so can you talk more about the particularities of Turkish capitalism and in general, states that are formed by imperialism? Another good example would be the Philippines, I believe.
Yeah, very good. May I go, Alan? Yeah, okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sharon, very good point. Very good point. In the age of imperialism, again, I see that there is a certain functionality that nullifies what is called the national bourgeoisie. So yes, you very rightfully brought the comprador bourgeoisie into the discussion, which is precisely what I'm saying. Yes, there are Turkish capitalists, but the importance is not their nationality, but who do they serve? Even looking at, you know, we're talking about capitalism becoming a global system. So there is no Turkish nationalist that tries to protect its turf against imperialists. All they want is to work together with the foreign investment so that the foreign investors would do the investments, take the surplus value. They don't care as long as they get the percentages. Because here, just let's do an experiment. If I wanted to be a bourgeois in Turkey or in El Salvador or in Philippines, okay, what will I do? Shall I? Let's say that I'm producing shoes, okay. You know what? It is a messy process. I gotta work with the the workers, the regulations, and the research and development, setting up factories, I don't know, manufacturing my own shoemaking, equipment. No, 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 no. And then what? I'm gonna make a 10%, 12%, profit? No. I go to my U.S. bosses. They come and set up the factory. They tell me what buttons to push. My only function there is to make sure that the workers don't unionize and the production goes the way that the US bosses want. And I got my share and life is good. It used to be before imperialism. It used to be that the national bourgeoisie wanted to really take over the surplus value extraction in their own company. This is mine, they screamed. This is mine. You can't come in here. There were wars and da for it. No, now it's an old model, a model that doesn't work anymore. It is much more safer to get your percentage, sell out the country, and run. Because the bigger, I mean, even if I were to manufacture shoes, I'm going to manufacture something that costs $50 at cost to me because, all of the input I have to put in. But the American manufacturer comes in, brings the shoes for $12. How am I going to compete with that? So the way that you're bringing it is to Turkish bourgeoisie or Philippines bourgeoisie. It is in their benefit to work with imperialism instead of trying to compete against it. Look at what happened in Russia. Okay, it was a very interesting twist of things where Russians were cut off, so now they are turning back to nationalism. Yeah, this is our turf. We're going to produce chips. We're going to produce this, that ourselves. But before that, they were all for going and working with the imperialists.
Okay, next is Gulden,
I don't know if
Yusuf
wants to contribute to that or.
Yes, well, you explained very good. The name is comprador rent capitalism. Like rent capitalists are like they exploit nature with minimal labor. It's not a long last like construction, and that's a very good example. It's not something that keeps on giving more labor or more commodities. You build a building and we take the money and run, or speculators and all sorts. I think you explained it very well. I will add these examples.
Thank you.
Okay, Gulden, followed by Raj. Gulden, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I think we need to accept that Erdogan's government's nice face has not collapsed just now with this earthquake. In addition to what the speakers mentioned, thank you, speakers, by the way. I wanted to reiterate on how Turkish people put through in agony in this 20 years of Erdogan's government. Erdogan's real face had been exposed more than a decade ago. His fake face of serving his people has long been understood by the Turkish people. That in reality, he abandoned the inclusive politics long time ago and became intolerant, conservative, and even punishing towards intelligentsia, labor unionists, secular liberal left authors, university professors, etc. Starting in 2006, his attitude completely changed towards Turkish people. He transferred Turkey's decades of parliamentary system to one-man ruling authoritarian system. He weakened all of the state institutions and Turkish army. On the other hand, he strengthened religious organizations, religious schools, and religious clerks and fascist thugs. He surrounded himself with the sections of businessmen, journalists, politicians, clerics, lawyers, judges, private police force, who are all fundamentalist Muslims and strictly yes men for Erdogan. Erdogan's advisors consist of these people. There was an unsuccessful attempt in 2016. Using this occasion, Erdogan increased his oppression on the people by declaring the state of emergency and jailed thousands of people, killed 300 people with the suspicion of being supporters of the coup leader, Pennsylvania-based Islamic cleric Abdullah Gülen. Erdogan spent trillions of dollars to a 1,100-room palace, which has $250,000 expense a day. His 4 kids and their spouses are richer than the British aristocracy. His government also funneled trillions of dollars in the yes men around him. He is a record holder in the world for having the most number of luxury armored vehicles and a fleet of private jets. Some government employees are taking 6 incomes from the different government departments by just holding the title, while the Turkish people are getting poorer and poorer every day. Of course, this doesn't mean that the Kemalist regime prior to Erdogan treated people much better. Well, I just want to mention something about if I have time, something about the latest earthquake. This earthquake caught the country without a penny in central bank and with unqualified, unskilled clerics in executive positions, in emergency management organizations, as much as all other organizations. Government organizations were not prepared for this kind of disaster. They didn't even go to the area until the 3rd day, when thousands of people and opposition's municipalities gathered their resources and sent to the disaster area. They are stopped by the police. Merchandise is confiscated, and Erdogan's party, AKP party, banners and stamps placed on them. Most people died waiting to be rescued or froze to death. Hence, these raced to the ground. 82,000 buildings either collapsed or heavily damaged. As of today, close to 42,000 bodies dug out of the rubble. Much more are expected, much more dead people are expected to be dug out. Millions of dollars gathered as donations, but most people displayed their mistrust to the government and sent their donations to the organizations alternative to the government. One of these people is Madonna, by the way. So now Erdogan's party, AKP, is trying to delay the June 18th elections, which is against the Constitution. My comments are this. I don't have any questions for the speakers. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional comments, Mehmet and Yusuf?
Just to bring up to question is this. Gülden brings up points, but this is the discussion happening on the streets in Turkey today. Yes, the AKP government is, they are Islamic clerics. I mean, the head of the search and rescue operation is a cleric. He doesn't, all these things. But I'd like to bring the question of the exceptions and the rule. What is the exception? And what are the rules? what I am trying to show here is that this incompetency, this anti-democratic trend is the rule. And there are exceptions sometimes when it is needed, like in Mustafa Kemal. Why did he try to build an infrastructure? Was it because that he wanted to have, like to develop capitalism in its own sake? No, because he must have known that a developed capitalism will eventually rule, will eventually join imperialism. So again, AKP has failed in many terms, yes, but do we say that AKP is the exception to a very well going system, and then AKP comes, oh well, they're bad, or is AKP the rule? So that's what I'm trying to say. I am saying that no matter what, the anti-democratic forces always wins in countries like Turkey, El Salvador, or Philippines. Especially Philippines is a good example that was brought in there. So I'm trying to analyze what is common in all these countries. Why have we seen so many military coups? In United States, there was one attempt, 4 years ago, and I look at the murder of, JFK as the coup. But we see every other day a coup happening under our noses. What is the difference? Why? So what is the exception? What is the rule and what are the exceptions? I'm looking at the entire line from the establishment of the republic as the rule with no democracy, one-man rule, incompetency, so on and so forth. And then there are times when certain exceptions come in, where democracy kind of tries to show its face, bam, it's down again. The rule happens. Sorry about that, too long. Yusuf?
Yusuf, do you want to go ahead and comment?
Yes, very good points. Thank you, Gülden and Mehmet. One thing, Erdogan never, well, what happened in the beginning is that in order to get his the religious, so-called religious orders, which are political and economic, rather than just contemplating theology, in order to get them to get them on the forefront, he needed, what was needed was to relax the and eventually undo the constitutional foundations established by Kemal. So he enlisted a co-opted part of the left. The theme was that, well, capitalism is just interested in money, that we don't care if you will be Kurdish or Turkish or whatever. This is, of course, very untrue. Capitalism thrives on inequality, but that was the discourse, the liberal discourse presented by AKP and to a section of the left that had lost its class perspective. So that was the pretense of being liberal until he came to power, and not only came to power, but also consolidated state power. So that's my comment on Gülden's.
Just one last sentence that, as a progressives, we have to emphasize what's being done to the poor people and the working class in the country in order to change it. We just can't say that, oh, it's going to be the same, whichever government is going to come, and nothing is going to change. No, we have to keep emphasizing this is part of our struggle. That's what my opinion. Thank you very much.
Very
Okay,
good
next
point.
is Raj, and followed by Janet, followed by Dave, and then Gene. If you guys could keep your comments down, we'll try to get everybody in before we end. So Raj, go ahead.
So thank you, Mehmet and Yusuf. I have 3 questions for Mehmet and 1 for Yusuf. So the 3 questions are these. First of all, do you consider United States to be a democracy when it is doing kind of the 2 parties interchangeably rob the people and screw them? Ever since I've come here, that's what I've watched. And if it is not a democracy, is it imperialism? And if it is imperialism, why is it different now than in 1966? Or is there no difference? So that's my first question. My second question is, do you consider Russia and India to be third world fascisms? And if so, how? What are your reasons? I mean, are they capitalist countries and where democracy, bourgeois democracy is possible? And the third question is, this Maoist thesis of national bourgeoisie and comprador bourgeoisie seems to me was pretty opportunistic of Mao. You know, basically, if you are saying certain businesses are national minded, actually capitalism, businesses are always for profit. And they struggle in whatever circumstances, they want to make the most profit and become monopolies. So basically, Mao was trying to explain how to live with this situation that he had. And that's not a universal theory that applies at all times. Capitalism, when it develops, why wouldn't the Indian capitalists be able to use all the leverage of the state to be able to fight? Maybe they cannot fight, but that doesn't mean they automatically become the instrument. So that's the third comment and question. And to Yusuf, do you believe in this third world fascism theory? That doesn't seem like you believe it. And if you don't believe it, what is the difference between your view and that? How you see your thinking as different from Mehmet's? Thank you.
Okay, Mehmet, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Raj. U.S. democracy, as I mentioned in the beginning, is that, like even imperialism, even capitalism is in a state of flux, it's changing. And depending on the world, depending on the forces, especially of the forces that resist it, it will change. But one of the greatest forces that pushes the capitalist countries, capitalist governments and the state to react is its economic power. And we are seeing worldwide, we keep on saying that capitalism in its final crisis, capitalism in its imperialism is declining. But these reflect back on the way that the governance is done in these countries, especially with the Soviet Union gone. Now, United States looks at itself as, hey, I have no opposition whatsoever. I can do whatever I want to. And that's why from the time you came to the United States, when Soviet Union existed, there was a face of United States had to put to the world, we protect the human rights, we are this and that, and rich people, and look at how successful. It doesn't have to do that anymore. There's no opposition. So with the crisis of capitalism, decline of US imperialism, the loss of Soviet Union in the world, I am seeing that more and more, even the bourgeois democratic governments and states will have to go more towards oppression and fascism, especially with this decline. The contradictions between the working class and the ruling classes gets more severe. It means that we can expect more reaction from the people not accepting what is being pushed down their throats. And this reaction has to be suppressed. And like I said, there's no Soviet Union anymore. So the United States doesn't have to play in the beauty contest. It has the police, it has that special units, the war units, militarization of the police we talked about here a couple of weeks back. All of these are getting prepared in case people don't buy the propaganda of how good life is in the United States. As we can see in communications everywhere after 9/11 especially, it's getting worse and worse, and the state is getting stronger and stronger. Just like it's a path. I don't look at it as cutting down at like 11:53 p.m. or to fascism. It's a process. And if capitalism does not have the power to brainwash the people, then what else does it have but force, but violence? And that brings us to, again, to the fascism. Yes, I am seeing a path towards fascism in the United States. It still is, I would say, if you compare, there's no black and white, but it was a bourgeois democracy. But all those bourgeois democratic institutions are being eroded, even under our nose, as happening. Russia, India, are they third world fascism? Yes and no. Russia has a special place because it had a socialist infrastructure, and it was actually, I was surprised the way that Russia survived this latest attack. And I believe that the reason why they survived is their socialist infrastructure that allowed them to now sit back and say, okay, you can cut us off from the world, but we have our force, we have our power. But internally, it's not a very democratic environment, and I wouldn't expect it to be. I wouldn't expect it to be. If if you ask the Russian capitalists, I'm sure their number one preference would be to work with imperialism, but that socialist infrastructure gave them a choice. Gave them a choice, saying that, okay, without the imperialists financing and controlling our resources, we can do this, man. We can do it. National bourgeoisie, that discussion. And Russia can do it, but can India? Can India do this? If you cut off their ties to the world, their markets, their import, their export, their technology, will India be able to survive? I don't think so. So that's why a force has to be used in India to suppress the people, to toe the line. And that is as Dimitrov was, I read it there, you can have parliamentary, you can have unions, you can have, different languages, all of that, as long as the finance capital, the rule, fierce rule is established. I don't think the world now has the luxury of bourgeois democracy anymore. It's a luxury. It was Soviet Union that kept them in line. It was the people's struggle that kept them in line, and those are eroding. The Soviet Union is gone, and the forces are unfortunately eroding. So that's why I do see sliding into fascism. And capitals in India fighting the state. No, in several of my presentations, I brought the concept, which is, I believe, very central to all this discussion, is imperialism becoming an internal affair. Look, this is a terminology. Imperialism, instead of being an external force, is now an internal affair. Meaning what? The Turkish army, doesn't work to protect Turkey and its borders from the imperialists so that the Turkish capitalists could exploit their own world. No, 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 no. Turkish army is there to fight against the Turkish people, Kurdish people, so that they don't raise their heads against imperialism. Imperialism becoming an internal affair, comprador capitalism. Turkish capitalists love the way imperialism just is in their country. It gives them a chance. So does Indians. So does the Filipinos. So does, in the third world country, because there is no other countries cannot survive what Russia survived. So that's why their capitalists would go with imperialism. And in order to do that, the state force becomes the central force of imposing imperialism in their own country. Imperialism becomes an internal affair. What does it mean for the revolutionaries? If you're going to fight, you're not going to, in Turkey, in El Salvador, you're not going to fight the American soldiers invading and occupying your country. No, those happen, but no. You're going to fight the Turkish army. You're going to fight the Turkish state if you're fighting imperialism. You're going to fight the Turkish business class if you're fighting imperialism. So that's why Indian bourgeoisie, I believe, benefits tremendously from the Indian state and the government. That is the agent of imperialism in the land of India. I hope I answered.
Yusuf, if you could address just the specific question that Raj directed at you, I'd like to move on. We only have less than 10 minutes left, so go ahead, Yusuf.
What I just have somewhat disagree with Mehmet is a sort of a historical point about the role of Mustafa Kemal, mine being a little more nuanced. Now, the question is, I don't find it relevant to the present situation in Turkey. It's not the situation from 1990 to 1923, certainly not. The quote unquote national bourgeoisie has lost all, it doesn't need to galvanize the working class. It just makes its own elbow room by dealing with various by taking advantage of the contradictions in the international situation. So,
but is Turkey a third world fascist state, in your opinion?
Yes, you might very well characterize it as that, or at least incipient fascism. Of course, there's a difference. I would say there's a difference between the situation now and when the jackboots, the fascism, when the jackboots come in. But I understand Mehmet's point.
Janet, followed by Dave, and then I think we're probably going to run out of time. If you could keep it to about 2 minutes, please. Janet, go ahead.
Okay, I'll try. Forgive me, I joined late, so I hope this is appropriate. My first encounter or experience with Turkey was, and only, was I was a passenger on the 2010 Gaza Freedom Flotilla, and we were all arrested and imprisoned in Israel. And Turkey nonprofit played a large role in that. And Turkey sent 3 huge airplanes to rescue us. And we were, so grateful and impressed. And anyway, so when I came home, I learned about a Stanford University program. I think it's called Mediterranean Studies Forum. And so I went to a couple of their programs. I just looked up, there's now, they have a Center for Democracy Development and the Rule of Law. And they have a program on Turkey there at Stanford. So I was wondering, probably Mehmet, are you familiar with this program at Stanford? And if so, could you comment on it? And then could you also, I don't know if you talked about BRICS, and Turkey, I think, is flirting with joining BRICS. And one last thing, you said, you were talking about Stop the Left, and you said it's called something, and I didn't catch that. If you could just tell us the name of what that was.
First of all, I'm not familiar with that program. I'm sorry. So I wouldn't know what to say about that. The second thing is to Stop the Left was a left appearance, like it appears left, but is not, like a liberal left here. That was the program that was developed by Ecevit. It's called center left. Center left.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was, and they admitted that it was just to prevent the left from appearing. I'm sorry, did you have another question I may have forgotten?
About BRICS.
Oh, yes. Actually, that's a very good question, because here we are talking about, again, with the declining of imperialism and everything, new blocs are emerging. Yes, that's true. And Turkey is, unfortunately under Erdogan, is now trying to find a position where it can flourish. But it's not for Turkey. He is doing this for, he really is thinking that he may become the leader of the Islamic world. And so he is trying to negotiate, but remember, it's not a very honest discussion. He's always, Turkey is a NATO country. Turkey is committed to United States. But he is, and Turkey is flirting with Russia, especially in this Ukrainian war. We have seen that it tried to push itself as a negotiator, as a force that will where people have to listen to it. It failed completely. Putin doesn't take him seriously. I mean, he goes to see Putin, and Putin makes him wait at the door with his entourage for 3 or 5 minutes before opening the door. I mean, this is Erdogan. And I wish we had time. I would have gone into the there's a nuclear facility being built, a joint effort between Russia and Turkey. And Turkey claims that it's gonna, be a part of it. But Erdogan refuses to pay for anything that the Turkey is supposed to pay. He is blackmailing Putin to pay him personally, his corporations. I showed the gang of 5. Those are involved in building the nuclear facility. And so he's begging Putin to pay the private parties instead of getting Turkey as a country officially politically involved in it. So Putin is just laughing him off. Now, so Turkey's, as Gülden said, today, if you have a couple of bucks in your pocket, couple of dollars, you are richer than the Turkish state right now. If you have $2, you are richer. So how is Turkey going to join the, the BRICS? I think they're joking. Thank you.
Okay, last question is Dave. Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi, Mehmet. Thanks for the wonderful lecture. I just have questions. One was that, was there any capitalist mode of development in the Ottoman Empire, before First World War? And like you mentioned that how they try to eliminate all the non-Muslim capitalists. And I'm wondering why, if it's an emerging bourgeoisie, they wouldn't like to eliminate the capital, they would like to increase their ranks. And so was that, you think, the fundamentalists behind this, more the feudal system still coming over, and trying to do this? Because Indian bourgeoisie in the Indian National Congress, when they were fighting Britishers, it was not like the gang model in that. It was more like the mass movement. So those are my questions.
Thank you. Very good questions. Look, let's understand that Ottomans were a failed state. It was finished. It was finished completely. We could discuss the reasons why, but it was not able to produce capitalism. The elements of capitalism existed only in the non-Muslim environment, non-Muslim population. Why? Because traditionally, the Turkish mentality, the Muslim mentality under Ottomans were this: I'm not going to work. I will only work if the palace, the sultan calls me and gives me a work. All the other work is for those stupid non-Muslims. I'm not going to be doing banking. I'm a Turkish guy. How can I be seen doing banking or trade or production or science or agriculture or health, the medicine? Those were Turks would laugh at you if you ask them to make their sons or daughters learn these things. Those are for the people on the street. I mean, how dare you ask me to do those things? So that's the way when we come to 1890s, but the world changes into capitalism. Now those things that Turks look down upon are becoming important in the development of capitalism. But Turks have nobody to do this. So what do they do? Yes, you're right. It's a contradiction between two things: nationalism, racism on one side, and wanting to become a capitalist on the other. Turks chose the nationalist side, the racist side. They said it's better off that we get rid of these non-Muslims than having them lead the capitalist development in our country. So they killed them off, and with the help of Mustafa Kemal, who thought that he could build this, I mean, it's an open theft of any capitalist enterprise that was owned by Armenians. Mustafa Kemal goes to Adana, gives a big speech, very famous. He says, this land is yours, the Turks. If they start to come back for their property, we're not going to allow them. You own it now. Well, when modern Turkey was established, it had only 6 factories, six. And those factories are like, 20 people working in them, small things. So there is no capitalism in modern Turkey. In Ottomans, yes, there was some kind of starting, but again, a failed state because they couldn't become capitalist. There are elements, and these elements mostly are with the help of the foreign investment, Germany especially, English especially. And that's why Turks hated racially Greeks and Armenians, because they said, just like Yusuf was saying, how the Kurds are now working under the umbrella of NATO. Well, the Turks were saying, oh, the imperialists are protecting the non-Muslims. Yeah, we know how this works, but we'll get our hands on you. We are fighting imperialism while they were killing their own citizens. Why? Because they are collaborators of imperialism. Why? Because they are doing business. They are the only ones who are doing business. They are the ones getting rich. It's like the Germany talking about the Jews. They're always rich. They own everything. They have everything while we are the second-rate, people of our own country. So let's get rid of them. That was the solution they came up with. I don't know if I answered your question there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's past 12:30. I think we're going to have to wrap up. Sorry about cutting it short, but want to ask people to come back next week. Good presentation, Wilmington 10, and on March 19th, Scott Ritter live at the library. So thank you very much. Thank you to Yusuf and to Mehmet for your presentation. And we'll see you next Sunday morning. Thank you.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, at yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.